The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
George, how are you?
So far, so good, man. How about yourself?
I'm good. I'm happy to know that bullet hell games still not my thing. You know, like I made that assessment a couple weeks ago when we recorded our last episode, and then I kind of thought like, hey, I haven't played a game like this in a long time. Like I got mad, thumb actions now that I didn't have when I was a kid. Like maybe nope, not even a little bit.
So still a hard pass on these, huh?
So this is where it actually was a little bit surprising. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I was just as bad at it as I thought I would be.
That's reasonable because, you don't have to be good at it in order to enjoy it. So even if you just like putz around the sandbox literal of the first level, you're like having a blast and, you're just like a 3-year-old just like, look, sand, like doesn't matter that you're not, building rockets to the moon. So, as long as you're not like playing the game thinking like, hey, if I were to jump off a cliff, do I think that would be more entertaining than what I'm doing right now? Yeah, no,
it never quite got to that point. It did when I was done. I was sure that I was done. So here, let's do the administrative at the top. So we played Gradius 3, which is the 5th game in the Gradius series. And then it's not really. I saw that kind of eyebrow raise, like, is it?
Actually, I was 100% in because I was, like Final Fantasy 4 is really 3 or whatever. I was like, maybe, I don't know.
That's true. That at that time in history, Americans were just like, what is even counting?
Yeah.
But so
does that even count, bro?
So it was an arcade game. It was an arcade series that they then, brought to consoles once consoles were kind of powerful enough. And just a quick aside to that, you may have noticed while you were playing that if there was more than one things on screen, the frame rate just totally fell into the toilet.
Absolutely.
And I kind of wonder. I was like, is it me? Like, am I somehow screwing this up? So I did a quick bit of Googling around and found some old Nintendo magazines and old like gamer magazines where they have archived their articles on the internet now. Mm-hmm. And turns out, no, that really affected every single person on every single cartridge. It was still in that time when arcade hardware was basically a PC and console hardware was not that. So when you ported something, just like our experience with Golden Axe, like you recognize like, oh, this was obviously an arcade game that they then brought to home console.
Yes. No, actually, that was one of the things, and that does tie into visuals that I noticed is, the first level you go through and kind of everything's cool. And then once you get to the bubble level and you start... you start blasting bubbles apart. Like, yeah, the frame rate drops to a crawl, which, to be fair, I liked.
Yes.
Because it was awesome. Because, like, all of a sudden, like, everything's moving way slow, and you're like, oh, man, this is way easier to react to now that, like, everything's moving like it's molasses. So, like, because Aaron watched me play this, I was like playing it and I was just like, I'm happy about this situation. Like this has gotten better. So win.
Yeah, I had basically the same feeling, especially because I'm so terrible at bullet hell games. I was like, well, so now there's things moving a little bit slower. And then like I started reading through those articles and I was like, oh, turns out every like 9-year-old had basically the same feeling. Like I'm angry at this game for taking my quarters. So now that it's not playing correctly and it's like 8 frames per second, I'm kind of okay with this.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that was I'm glad that you also had that. But to be fair, I actually do remember that. Like, so through my nostalgia clock, I was like, I remembered it slowing down. I played this game more than I should have as a kid. Like, I don't know why, but I did play this game a fair amount.
Yeah, so this was when you suggested this as a possible option. I looked at the box art and I looked at a couple screenshots and I was like, I firmly remember that this is a game that existed and that I probably played it, and those memories are now lost to me. So like, I kind of went in with a weird, because I mean, not playing a lot of bullet hell games because I wasn't particularly good at them, and that was mostly an arcade thing when we were kids. I was like, well, if I'm thinking of any bullet hell game ever, I'm basically thinking of this one. So I have nostalgia goggles for the concept, but not necessarily like this game specifically. But I mean, they all play like nearly identically. It's a tried and true formula.
It's just they basically just reskin it. You know, it's like the ship looks a little bit different, the bad guys look a little bit different. Probably some of the minor mechanics change, but that's about it.
Yeah, and on that note, on the visuals like looking a little bit different, I thought the visuals were actually great. Like, I would say these pixel arty graphics held up phenomenally well.
I really enjoyed the visuals. I thought that also the enemy design was very varied and unique and enjoyable, you know,
especially among the bosses. Some of the ships are just palette swaps, like, oh, this one takes 2 shots and that one only takes 1 shot. But I mean, every boss is completely unique.
Yeah, and kind of like cool looking and fun, because like, you know, the first boss is that giant earwig, you know, and then
it's like a big antlion thing.
Yeah, and then in my mind, it was always the earwigs that they used in Star Trek: Wrath of Khan.
Yeah, totally. Yep. I mean, that's disgusting, but yeah, absolutely. It also, to me, it reminds me of the antlion boss in Final Fantasy II in America, 4 in Japan. Because I mean, it's kind of got like a dung beetle mouth, like the huge pincers that go way out in front of it. Yeah, and that's what the antlion looked like in.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, same color and everything. I think the earwigs in Star Trek were black, weren't they?
Yeah, I think so. But because this was on the Super Nintendo, which is what I had at my dad's house, and I pretty much watched an unconscionable amount of Star Trek at my dad's house, you know, like those two things, visuals were often close to one another.
Yeah,
in my experience.
I definitely follow you.
Yeah. But you know, the unlike some other games where everything is just basically palette swaps, like I was always interested to get to the next level, because also all of the level designs themselves were very varied, unique, and interesting, you know, because the first one's like sand level and then bubble level and then like forest level, and so and then everything becomes on fire, and then weird whatever Easter Island head level.
That was so. I agree with you that the visuals are varied and they're lovely. I did on like my second or third like session of playing, I had like the glass shattering moment where I was like, what's all this fire even doing in space? And I had to like really like firmly push that back into the what do you call it? The suspension of disbelief. Like,
yeah.
I know it's a video game and I know there are far more absurd things I've dealt with in video games, but it's just something about like the space bubbles, the space fire, the tiki heads are actually not the weirdest part. But it was just like, I couldn't, like once that glass was shattered, I really had to remind myself like, yes, it's a video game. There's fire in space. It's not that big of a deal.
It's not the first time that has been done, but I really thought like all the visuals were very varied and thus like interesting, you know, because you know with a game like this, it's like, well, what's one of the, you know, like core aesthetics to it? And I was at least drawing a little bit on discovery because I wanted to know what the next level looked like, you know. So
I can see that.
So you know, like so I was like excited to be like, yay, I beat this boss. Now what's this next one going to look like? And then he's like, oh, everything's on Fire World because sure.
Because
and
hell in space.
Yeah. And then so the unfortunate thing, and we'll get to it when we get there, but is why I got so depressed when I hit the brick wall of my skill level because I was like, oh, I wanted to see more. I can't get past this though. So
yeah,
here
I
we
did
are.
when I was looking up some of those articles about the frame rates and the move from the arcade. They did what I can only assume is like classic. Let's port this game and change things for seemingly no reason. Where there's a few less levels, which is probably a memory issue. That's okay, fine. But like level 6 on the arcade is like level 2 on the console, and then like level 2 on the console is like level 9 on the arcade. And like there's just, it's not just that the game is shorter, it's that there were certain levels they were like, this is a weak level, so maybe we'll drop that one. But then they also reordered them slightly.
That's odd. I wonder what.
I'm sure there was some, because I mean, games at this time were not made by a crew of 10,000 at a massive company. There's like probably 15 people. And, so one of them or a few of them were probably like, I always thought this level kind of sucked and we're kind of running tight on space. So let's kick that one. And these two, instead of having them back to back, they'll make more sense if they're in a different order. And I can't imagine those meetings being enjoyable.
No, because I'm sure that they got like way more granular than they needed to, and it's like, oh well, this one has a fire component, and this other one has a fire component, so we really can't have those back to back. But then what if this? And it's like, oh, but I don't like this boss leading into. It's like, oh, God.
And I'm trying to imagine the schoolyard arguments of like, the 5th level, the fire one. It's like, actually, in the arcade one, the fire one is the 7th level. You plebeian.
Yeah. Generally speaking, if I say, I really enjoyed this game, particularly this one aspect of it, and the person says, actually, in that tone, like I have no investment in the next thing that they're going to like. There's nothing that they can say that's going to follow that's going to be worthwhile.
I mean, this is the bane of all people on the internet, but like women and minorities especially, is white men coming out of the woodwork of Twitter and Reddit to actually all over them.
Yeah. It's just, especially when you say like, oh, I actually really enjoyed this game. It was very enjoyable. Actually, the real reason why it's like, I don't like you very much.
Yeah, we're done here, done forever. One other thing I will say about the enemies, since you mentioned them looking different, is I felt like the way they looked, it was always pretty clearly communicated to me if they were going to behave differently than a similar enemy. And the bubble stage is a good example of that, because there's one spot where the little bug guys come out and they're in a bubble and you have to pop the bubble and then you can hurt them, right? Which is like, you just shot 100 million bubbles, so the game made it clear to you how the bubble mechanic works. And then they also introduced the little thing that screwed me pretty hard on my first couple plays, where if you let Bubble Guy go off screen, they will actually exit the bubble on their own and come after you from the back.
Yes, that they will. There were definitely some areas like that. There was at one point where I was like soaring along and I was in like the upper left-hand corner, and just bad guy came in from out screen, and I just literally couldn't react fast enough, and it killed me. So there were a couple of times when that happened, but considering the age of the game, I was surprised at how few times when I died, I thought like, that the game didn't telegraph well enough, like that the visuals weren't clear enough that I knew where I was going. And it's like I had to make a couple of bad decisions or risky decisions in a row before all of a sudden I'm like, now I'm cornered past the point of return, Yeah. And so I think part of that is that, like, for instance, all of the turrets look like turrets and they're pointed and angled in the direction of like the bullets they're going to be firing at you, So it's like, looking at that, I can immediately say, especially because, they're like tracking you, right? I can immediately say like, that thing's probably going to start shooting bullets at me, And then, so I thought that they did a good job with those kinds of, like, the enemy design was as such that I most of the time knew what that enemy was going to do.
Yeah. And there's, in like volcanoes in space, there's an area like you do. There's an area where like the ceiling can fall on you. Yes. And there's like turrets hidden in there. I guess they must be hidden unless they grew in there. So I don't know. This is like their deployment method for turrets, I guess. But the ceiling like shakes just a tiny bit right before it falls. And if you're directly underneath it and you see the shaking, you're screwed. But you will remember like, oh, I need to watch for parts of the ceiling that are shaking and not being too close to the ceiling, because in this volcanoes in space world, that might happen sometimes. Yeah. So there's a lot going on screen. And I mean, it's an arcade game. They're definitely trying to kill you, right? Because they want your money. But there were only a couple of times where I was just like, you know, like most of the time I was like frustrated because I am bad at this, but not like the game is cheating.
Yeah, agreed. And especially because I didn't know that it used to be an arcade game, but I do remember this style of game, and I expected to be way more frustrated than I was, you know? So, I mean, win on that thing. I mean, I feel, though, that as these episodes continue on, that my bar keeps getting lower because, like, I keep getting, like slugged out, like, with, like, these games. I'm like, oh, I remember this. This was fun. It's like, blam, you know? And so, like now I'm at the point where I'm just kind of like, yeah, you know what? I played this game and I left playing the game not feeling like I wanted to shoot somebody. So
this is how you're going to reach enlightenment.
Yeah, the game must have been doing something, right? You know? And so, yeah, so I thought that the also, too, to speak on the visuals, that the contrast between you and the enemies was enough that, like, there was never anything going on in the background or in the foreground or even with all of the stuff moving around. I always had a firm grasp of where I was and where I was in relationship to all of the bad guys. And so I felt that the visuals were at least crisp enough for that. And also, like, I don't know, and we'll get into it in more detail in a bit, but I don't know what loadout you picked.
I tried a few different ones.
I tried a few different ones, and we can get into it later. But my shield, I often pick the barrier shield, right?
Yeah.
And I thought they did a good job considering how tight that is to your ship, that I was never confused as to whether or not my shield was still active, you know?
Yeah, because it like shrinks a little bit as you take damage.
Exactly. So even the visual was distinct enough for each phase of the shield that I could tell you, like, oh, well, I've taken 1 or 2 or 3 hits, you know?
So the shield where it, like, it's the little spinny thing, which I guess is all the shield types except barrier, but they're positioned differently.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Every time, single time.
I know where you're going with it. Yes.
I activated it, and those things come flying from off the screen.
Yep.
And track on you with like unreasonable speed. I had a little heart attack.
Oh yeah, no,
because it looks like the game has just decided, like, yeah, we're gonna kill you now.
Yeah, no, with sphincter clenching accuracy, they come flying out of nowhere. Because, so like I said, I was generally using the barrier shield, but then I played a little bit with Erin, and Erin decided to spite me for some reason. So she just picked a random loadout. And so I had no idea what, like, any of my stuff did. And so I activated my shield, fully expecting the barrier shield to activate. And then, like, you know, all of a sudden, like, these 2 enemies, as far as I'm concerned, come, like, screaming out of nowhere through several walls. Yeah. You know, like, and so I just started screaming profanities. and Aaron turned to me like, whoa, what's going on? And I'm like, oh yeah, nothing. I just saw my death.
Yeah. What bothers me is that I probably, until I switched to the barrier shield, I probably had that experience 6 times, and every single time I was like, oh god. Oh wait. Whew, okay. And then like 5 minutes later, just oh god.
Yeah. Because all your brain does is just, it's processing, like, that's moving impossibly fast with impossible accuracy at you. And that's all your brain can do before, like, and it does seem like time almost dilates because, I mean, that animation probably takes like 1 to 3 seconds somewhere in there.
But it feels like an eternity.
Yeah. It does. Like, you know, like you just feel your adrenal gland, like, gush, like adrenaline into your body as you're like fight or flight.
I mean, the option thing doesn't come from nowhere. Like, it comes out of your butt. Like, you drop it out of the ship.
Yeah. That one isn't the big giant circle. speaking of, did you ever get the option stealer? Did that guy ever show up for you?
So I'm gonna say yes, but only because in hindsight I recognized the effects of it. So, man, we're just like, there's no way. We apparently cannot like follow the agenda.
Yep.
So we're just doing this.
Yeah, it's fine.
So like I had the 4 like spinny ones where they like rotate around you.
Oh yeah.
And I got to a boss, so the scrolling of the screen stopped, and I was like, wait, how do I only have 3 now? How did that happen? Because as far as I could tell, under no circumstances do they take damage.
No, not as far as I could tell.
Yeah, so I was like, how did this happen? So there's actually an enemy that eats your options.
Yeah, no. So what happened to me, and I can totally link this back to visuals. So bear with me. So I'm just like flying along doing my thing, and I was using the F option, so they're like big old wings, which is probably why I was able to key into it a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I was rocking out, man. I hadn't been touched in forever, and then all of a sudden, like it shows up behind you and it makes a little like you kind of noise, and it tracks you pretty tightly, so I see that, and so I like pull into like the center of the screen, and I'm trying to kind of gauge what's going on and why this, because it's a weird insect looking thing, and so I just don't want any of that. And so then it like fires out at you, and I was like, okay, so now I like drop down to get behind it so I can shoot at it, and then it turns like on a really tight arc, or at least this is the way I remember it. Maybe I'm also just
projecting.
Yeah, like it's like horror goggles, like they're nostalgia goggles and horror goggles. Yeah, so it just comes out, and I think it's gonna like kill me, but instead it just like snatched one of my orbs and left. I was like, oh, was that the you've been playing the game too well, bot? Screw you, man. But then, moved on with life. But yeah.
It is a little cheap.
Yeah. But again, I do think that, for me personally, the visuals were still stark enough that like my attention was drawn to this thing where it's like, hey, we're going to dick you over now. I was like,
be advised.
Oh. Yeah, but it is still, the visuals were crisp enough that it was like, be advised, this unfair thing is about to happen to you.
Yeah, I think in the games, in the defense of the visuals, I'm pretty sure, if I recall correctly, when that happened to me, I was in Space on Fire Land, where there's a lot going. Not because there's more on the screen, but because it's all flashing. So like there's just a lot happening visually. So I'm not surprised if that's where this one enemy that does this one bizarre thing happened, that I was like, oh my God, I can't tell what's happening. And just to put my stamp on visuals, unless you have anything else you want to add, the only time I felt like the frame rate thing was an issue is if I got hit by a bullet that hadn't been visible to me a moment ago. And to be fair, that I honestly don't believe that happened very many times, but that's the trade-off of like, you are essentially moving at flash-like speeds because everything is going so slow. But if there's an object or an obstacle that you are not trying to avoid because it's literally cloaked, then that's a little crappy. But I really don't think that cost me many ships. I think most of the time I died is because I just died.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that, I can't think of a time when that happened to me. So, and again, it's I don't, like you were saying, it was a limitation of the software. So, it's not like the developer said like, what we're going to do, put in this really bizarre buggy glitch. It's more like, there is this bizarre buggy glitch that exists. Like, make some lemonade out of this,
Yeah. Let's talk about music and sound and beeps and boops.
Yeah.
So I can't explain this as well as I pretend to have explained the Mode 7 thing, but different companies were famous for different sound effects styles. Because, I mean, you had a limited number of instruments. There's a limited number of sounds that can be generated by the system at a time. So it's like, if you have an 88-key grand piano, you can do very different things than if you have like a 6-key child's like baby's first piano. So certain companies tended to have like a signature sound effect. Like you can you can usually tell, like, oh, this is a Square game, that's a Capcom game, that's a Nintendo game. Like they had like very familiar things, and this was a Konami game, and I don't know if it's just coincidence or what, but so many of the sound effects and many of the musical scores, which is a little different, right? Because I mean, that's a melody, sounded a lot like one of my favorite games from my childhood, this RPG called Soul Blazer. And like that just basically, it's like if a friend recommends like a movie to you, like you go into it with certain expectations. Because like once I realized, oh, all of this music sounds like Soul Blazer, like I just gave it so much more of a pass, because I was like, oh, you know Soul Blazer? I love Soul Blazer. Like, we go way back.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like, you know, somebody walks up to you and is like, oh man, you know, I really liked, you know, Captain America Civil War. It's like, I also love Captain America Civil War. Oh yeah, no, I remember one time when I was watching it while I was driving and I accidentally like ran my car into a phone pole, and you're like, wait, no,
wait,
okay. Wait. That took a little bit of a turn, but I'm still a little bit more forgiving because we were just talking about this amazing thing that we both liked, and obviously that's it. Yeah.
I found, I mean, I didn't have the same kind of memory for the music that you probably had, but I was like, I am enjoying all of this music. Like, I'm aware of it and I am enjoying it.
Yeah, I was in the same boat, especially with the music. You know, I didn't remember, and I probably couldn't even hum you the music now. It's not, to me, incredibly memorable, but it is enjoyable. You know, it's just kind of like fun, whatever. One of the things I did notice that I thought was very important that they did with the audio is there are very crisp audio cues as to when you're damaging bad guys.
Yes.
You know, and because at one point, you know, Aaron said to me, "It's like, how do you know that you're hitting him?" I'm like, "Do you hear that?" And it's like, yeah. I'm like, that every time you hear that noise, that means I've dealt them one damage, whatever, one damage unit, you know,
one hurt.
Yeah. No, I like that a lot because you got hertz as a measure of frequency or hertz as a measure of unit damage.
I'm actually referencing the terrible American translation of the original Dragon Warrior, where you had two damage spells. One was called Hurt, and the other one was called Hurt More. Yeah,
I got.
They used to pay like Indonesians who spoke neither English or Japanese to translate Japanese video games when they localize them. So that's why all the most hilarious translations come from the late 80s and early 90s.
Oh yeah, because there's like the you know, like all your base and like all that fun stuff.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, that's what happens when you pay someone who speaks neither language to do a translation.
Yeah, they are just desperately trying their best.
Oh yeah.
But I thought that, like I said, and I'm not sure how incredibly common, because I think this may be the only bullet hell game, certainly the only one I played with any regularity. So I don't know how common that technique is with this genre of game, but I thought it was invaluable and incredibly important, because otherwise I would have been frustrated and like not sure if I was doing anything. But even when, you know, with most of the bad guys, even with the visuals, they do a great job showing you like, hey, this is their weak point. Hey, this is where to shoot. But even barring that, even if I was just firing wildly, I could tell you whether or not I was dealing damage, you know?
Well, I mean, the enemy design, I felt like, is such that they didn't have to do the full Legend of Zelda, like, blinky, glowy red vulnerability spot.
Right.
But their design, like, the bubble enemy is like, well, I know that the bubbles just pop, and there's a thing inside this bubble, so I probably need to hit the thing inside the bubble. And like the dragon snake looking enemy, again, like metal dragons in space, why not? But there's they make like a distinct metally noise when you hit them, and only enemies make that noise. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Walls don't make that noise. So this is like your cue that, hey, this one takes a bunch of shots. You can kill it, but it's going to take like a whole bunch. And then when they explode, they have a very satisfying like kind of noise.
Yeah, I really did enjoy the enemy death noise. Unlike some other games that we may have played where the enemy death noise was less enjoyable.
It was nightmare inducing.
Yeah, that I still wake up to in dead sweats and panics. Yeah, no, I thought that it was appropriately satisfying. Even killing like the little bases on like the bottom that would open up and shoot ships at you. You know. Yeah, like especially you would shoot at them and they'd make that little metal noise, and then you kill it and it, make the exploding noise. But if you could get like a dead-on hit with a rocket, it would just give that exploding noise like right away. And I don't know, like I enjoyed that because I enjoyed hearing that noise.
Yeah, and they did a lot of really excellent theming with the music as well, because just like when you're hitting an enemy, when you've changed areas, when you've gotten onto a new stage, because some of the stages have multiple like kind of areas and the music changes a little bit in them where you just fly between and there's no boss. But then there's also pretty good attention to detail paid on like the first stage is like very like space adventure. And then when you get to the fire stage, it's like kind of heavy. Like there's a lot of bass in it. There's a lot more driving. Like it's very reminiscent of the hell level in Soul Blazer, but it's very kind of like, oh, things are serious now. Like before I was on like a fun space adventure, and then I went through like the bubble world and the music was a little different, and then I went through like this other spot and the music was a little different, and then you get to hell world, you're like, oh, this is like the serious angry music. Like I'm getting into the point where things have gone from not real to quite real.
Yeah, it has the I function has become squared. Like it is now I squared. Things have gotten real. But yeah,
gigantic nerd.
Says the person who's like sitting down saying, "Hey, you know what we should do? Play these old video games and pick them apart." But
I mean, you're in good company.
Yeah, I was gonna say no. Like let's both like pour ourselves a snifter of brandy in our glass house and stare at each other. So overall though, I did think that the so in some of the other games that we've played, that the sound was either A, horrifying and nightmare inducing, or B, didn't add anything. It was like, oh, okay, you need music because you just don't want to have the dead air, but I thought that both the music and the sound effects complemented the gameplay, which is not ubiquitously true, especially from games of this era.
I mean, it makes it feel more thought out, more like a complete package. And in this particular genre of game, like you were saying, the sound effects are giving you necessary information. Like,
yes,
there's things you need to know that the visuals couldn't necessarily communicate, because even in a world where there were no frame rate issues and they had unlimited processing power, like adding a different visual indicator when you're hurting an enemy versus when you're not would just be piling on more visual information in a game that by its design is already visually overwhelming. So outsourcing some of that to audio not only relieves some of the pressure on your visual processing, but it makes sense. Like, a projectile is striking an object. Like, yes, you're in space, but like it would generate a sound because fire in space.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that for my own personal things, both the enemy design for the visuals was very good, because it does generally, for instance, even the earwig dude, he's got these like huge arms, big old body, and then a different colored blue orb in the dead center of his body. I'm like,
shoot here.
I'm just gonna take a swing at that, And so then you do, and it makes it, It's like, so it's the game immediately. You guessed correctly. That is his weak point, So even the what was it? The giant tiki heads, the boss tiki heads. Right?
Oh yeah, where you have to shoot him in the mouth,
as you do. I mean. It's kind of like in Buffy when she says like, I'm going to stab her in the heart. It's like, well, she's not a vampire. You'd be surprised at how many things that'll kill. It's like, I'm going to shoot him in the mouth. Well, yeah, that's not necessarily the weak point. It's like, I'm going to try anyways. But for this one,
this is a perfect example of the sound and the visuals working together to communicate information to the player, because I was shooting the little heads that they spat out, and then I got into a rhythm where I was shooting the heads, and I was like, I'm not not visually making any progress of any kind. Like,
Right.
I'm not confident that there's going to be a fixed number of these heads, and once I've shot all of them, they will stop. And so then I was like, I'm gonna just start shooting things and seeing if I get any kind of different reaction, because I've been trained up until this point to expect a different reaction. And
Right.
when I went down low enough that I was hitting them in the mouth, the whole screen shakes, some
Yep.
rocks fall down. It makes like a crumbly rock noise, like, you know, an earthquakey kind of noise. And I was like, oh, that's where I have to shoot them. Like, it didn't have to
Yep.
be a big flashing red spot. It didn't have to look anything like the vulnerabilities on the other monsters, because they communicated information to me like, hey, the world only shakes when you shoot them in the mouth.
Yeah. And so far, not having the world shake and not shooting in the mouth hasn't been getting you anywhere. So you might as well try this. And
Yep.
and this can kind of segue us from, you know, audio to others. But that's actually one of the things I read recently as why video games help you learn, is because literally you're being handed a universe that has none of the physics necessarily of the one that we inhabit, right? So the game designers have to say, like, how fast can we teach you, you know? And so they do these sorts of things. I just think that it's so impressive, where it's kind of like God in Futurama, where he says, you know, like, when you do things right, people shouldn't be sure you've done anything at all. So when I was a kid, I couldn't have told you why I knew where to shoot. I just knew because everything keyed me into it, you know?
Yeah, I know I've probably told this story to you a million times, and maybe even on this show before, but on my second playthrough of The Last of Us, during the little opening cinematic, I'd gone the entire first playthrough without ever caving anybody's skull in with a brick. And then a zombie like jumps on you, and your brother caves his skull in with a brick. And I literally turned to Susan and I was like, I'll bet you can hit guys with bricks. Like, they showed me that for a reason. This game has proven to me that they don't give you superfluous and useless information. If they bothered to show a guy's skull getting caved in with a brick, I'll bet I can cave guys' skulls in with a brick. And lo and behold, you can. and that's like, even though that game is like super realistic, there's no reason as a seasoned video game player to just assume that that's something the game engine would afford me. Just like when I was playing Gradius, and I actually got to do some 2-player with Susan. One of us, I can't remember who, it was probably me, but like one of us flew into the sand dune right at the beginning and exploded. And I was like, well, yeah, of course, it's a solid object. Once I saw it happen, I was like, yes, obviously that is the way that should have responded. But until it responded that way, knowing that video games can be video gamey, I had no reason to just assume that it would.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that again, yeah, like with most of my deaths, I really did feel that it's like I had been given enough information to suss out that this thing, whatever it was going to kill me. And like one of the examples that I thought was interesting is that there are those orbs, right, that shoot out like whatever bullets, right? Because bullet hell game. Yeah. But now most of the orbs would shoot like 1 or 2, but these shoot like 9 in every direction, you know?
Yeah, it's like a clock face of like 12 directions. Just
yeah. So the first time like they show up, they enter into the screen, get like maybe 2 or 3 centimeters into the screen and fire that burst, you know? So unless you are like hard up against the back of the screen and really close to this new enemy you've never seen before, you have enough time to see that. And then, and by the time the bullets get to you, they're wide enough that they're not even a threat. And then 2 more come on, and it's like, that's the actual challenge, you know? Right. But they did a great job with like all that sort of stuff where, you know, if you're behaving normally in the fact that you can just assume that you're holding down the fire button always and generally trying to dodge stuff, you'll get the telegraph before like unhappiness befalls you. Yeah,
agreed. And that actually is, I think, a good segue into controls, because why even have a fire button? Like, who lets go over the fire button?
That's actually a reasonable point. I didn't think about that, where, you know, it's just like, yeah, no,
It's ABF, always be firing.
No, absolutely. So for controls and like overall gameplay, I thought the controls were pretty tight, honestly. One of the mechanics that they did that relays directly to the controls that I thought was an interesting choice and I thought really nice was the speed up function.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool because that means that you get to pick the speed of your ship, Now, obviously, you got to use it once because you're not if you really want to have any degree of functionality, you have to use it once. But then, I personally would always put a second one on there because I wanted that like extra little bit of maneuverability. Sometimes that would like bite me in the butt because that loosens out the controls a little bit, So I thought that was an interesting and I personally thought an enjoyable choice.
Yeah, the thing because I'd already been playing for a while, and then I asked Sue if she wanted to play with me so I could see what the 2-player experience was like, and I realized how much is a foregone conclusion if you are a seasoned video game player, but how even that breaks down between like epochs and genres. Like someone who would look at a Tetris style puzzle game, they have all of these preconceived notions and they automatically make these assumptions. When I was trying to explain the power-up mechanic to her, like I got half a sentence in before I was like, this is so stupid and video gamey. Like you collect those things, and then when it stops on the power-up you want, you hit that button. But if it goes too far, you got to keep collecting them until it loops around again. Like it's just, it's a super video gamey, and I don't know anything about what the arcade cabinet was like, but it would be nice if on the arcade cabinet there were just 6 buttons and you could and I'm sure that they didn't do that because part of the strategy is that the stuff like the option and the shield, you have to save up, like you have to earn those more expensive upgrades. And I get that, but this is one place where like the visuals kind of break down, is that information is only surfaced through trial and error. There's nothing that communicates to the player like, this is the more expensive toy, this is the less expensive toy, this is money, and if you save up money, you can get the more expensive toy. Like, you just have to figure that out.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately where my rose-colored glasses, goggles of some kind, afforded me a certain advantage because I remember that system very well, So like the minute I picked up the controller, I was immediately like, this is how it works. But I agree with you because I did have to explain it to Aaron, and it took some explaining, Yeah.
Well, because it feels, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it's this kind of game feels very video gamey, right?
Yes.
Like you're not in an immersive world, like you're playing a video game, like you totally are, and that's fine, but it becomes, an order of magnitude more video gamey when you have to explain like, oh, the floating boxes at the bottom, they're kind of like like where these powers come from is not very clear, but like that thing that has covered in spikes and definitely looks like it would kill you, that's money. Like it's just a weird, I mean, it's an arcade game.
Yeah, that is one unit power up. The other thing too, on that same note that I always thought it was weird is the fact that you can either have laser or double.
Yes, and I mean, because you would be like super overpowered, but it is massively frustrating.
Yeah, because like to me, I would have just gotten rid of, because I don't know how your thoughts on this, but
laser.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So obviously laser.
It's clearly the better option. I don't know why double exists in the game. So for those who haven't played, the double is like an additional, bullet gun, and then the lasers are lasers.
Yes.
So I mean, obviously lasers, so yeah. So I would always get frustrated when, I'd be collecting my power monies and then like hit the button and be like, oh no, wait. And, and so not only did I lose something that I wanted, the lasers, get something I didn't want, I'm now out of power ups. So I need to like now wait even longer to get this thing back that I already had. So that was mildly frustrating. It didn't happen as often as it could have, but it did happen more times than I'd like to admit to.
Well, so here's the question. So which laser?
Ooh. So the one that I played the most with this time. Now I had a different choice when I was younger, but this one, because I'm old man George now, I went with the Ripple laser.
So I was married to the Ripple laser at first because I was like, I'm not an amazing shot and I want something that covers the most physical space.
Exactly.
But I did want to try the others, and I gave a solid nod to the one that you have to power up and then it fires a massive death ball. Not because I liked it, but that confirmed to me something else about the double gun, which is the game actually supports different play styles, like different build outs, depending on your weaknesses. Like if you are constantly getting killed from behind, you should probably use the gun that fires up and behind you.
Right.
You know, so I mean, like if you just your intention is always in front of you and you cannot direct your attention behind you, like there's a gun to help alleviate that problem. If you're constantly being shot by like enemies that are on the bottom and you don't want to go down there because you're going to crash, like there's the spread bomb like missile that hits the ground and then like tracks along the ground a little bit. So there are actually weapons for different playstyles, which I thought was pretty cool. And that the power-up laser is I am a really good shot and I know exactly when I need to shoot. And that is not me. But I really respect that they afford you those different options. The one that I used the most at first was the Ripple. And then I switched to I think it's called the C laser, the one that looks like a thin beam. And the reason once I tried that one, I then stuck with it is because if something hits the side of that, it will kill them. So it creates a line across the screen and you don't have to hit them like with the spear head. If they touch the shaft of the spear, they also die. And I was like, well, this is a poor shot's dream. Like you basically, you get like 20 chances to hit an enemy.
Yeah. I think though, so the reason why I went with the Ripple predominantly was because it's just big AoE, whatever. The one that I used to play with, and I played with a little bit on this one, I was just kind of like, a part of me, you know, was like, I remember the day when I used to be way better at this, you know, but was a C laser with normal option, right? So like all of the
is that like the little J underneath you?
No, I think that's S option.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, no, get it together, Lyons. You know, come on. No,
Did you even play the game?
But yeah, so the normal option is the one where they always trail behind you, you know, so like
and they like mirror what you do, yeah.
Right. The reason why I like that one is because on enemies like and on most of the bosses, they have like a very distinct weak zone, right? So if you have all of your options, you just line them all up so that way they're all on top of each other, and then you fire your concentrated beam and you just blast through them.
Yeah. Yeah, see that makes sense for that play style, whereas I went with the rotating one so that I was just rocketing hate out into space in like every conceivable direction at all times.
Nice. What was yours? Okay, so there's speed up. What was your missile choice?
I was using the double forward for a while, and then when I started using the crazy laser, I went to the double back because I was like, I want something to prevent me from feeling like I just got screwed by an enemy who's slightly off screen behind me. So that gave me a certain amount of like security blanket.
And actually I did I think it's Hawkwind or whatever. I don't know.
They'll have crazy names and there's lots of random abbreviations.
Yeah. But yeah, I did the forward missiles generally. I played with a lot of them, but you know, my go-to was the forward missiles, F option and the Ripple laser, barrier shield. And then at first I was doing the Mega Crush ultimate, you know, where it just like kills everything on the screen. I was like, oh yeah, that's awesome. And then I realized that barrier restore is pretty awesome.
Yeah. So Okay, so first off, what difficulty were you playing on?
Easy. What's wrong with you? I like me.
Okay, so a quick aside to that. So yes, absolutely, no question, easy. Sue actually did ask me if I was going to play on hard just to see like how badly I would get obliterated on hard, and I accidentally on one of my playthroughs left it on normal, and that was hard enough. I was like, no, I don't really need to. I don't need to do this research. I can extrapolate from incomplete data what that experience would be like.
Yeah, actually, funny for me. So like I was playing on easy, right? And I only have the one controller, so I wanted to let Aaron, like we were going to switch off, and so we didn't actually end up doing the 2-player experience because of the way the controller, it didn't work very well, so it was fine. But I forgot to set her mode to easy, right?
Yes, very nice.
So yeah, because I just set player 1, got all my stuff configured, and then Aaron actually was she said, wait, did you set mine to easy too? And I said, no. So the white male played through the game on easy mode, and then with less experience, time, more energy, she was forced to play on a higher difficulty level. And she was like, I don't like how much of an allegory for life this has become so quickly. And I was like, yep. Well, anyways, here it is on normal mode. And then the game, just
also, I'm out of quarters. Do you have any quarters? Do you have like maybe for every 3 quarters you spend, like, could you then tack on a 4th one and I'll just spend 3? Like, let's, how can we, no, that's right up there with like the sibling that doesn't realize their controller's not plugged in. Yeah. And you're just playing single player. Like, yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, you're doing so great. Yeah. So I thought that was pretty funny, but I played the first round on normal, and then I died pretty quickly. And, and it was like, do you wish to continue? And I was like, not really. I'm going to knock it down to easy. And then once I put it on easy, I was like, all right, this is, I thought enjoyable. So speaking of playthroughs, though, let's talk quickly about difficulty spikes. more specifically, directly related to when you die and the game suddenly being ratcheted up to 11.
Yeah, which is my assumption, and I'm trying to think positively of strangers from 30 years ago, but my assumption is these people said, oh, it'd be so unfair even for an arcade game where we're trying to get quarters out of people if we just made them start the level over at the beginning. I mean, that seems so unreasonable. We'll have these checkpoints throughout the level, and as you cross through them, if you die, that's where you'll restart. Oh, and they'll have all of their weapons and things that they had when they died? No, absolutely not.
Yeah, no.
Then this is less of a gift. This is less of a let me take you out to dinner gift and more of a here's a puppy gift, where like your intentions may have been positive, but you've really caused more problems than not.
Yeah, well, especially because the idea of it's like, oh well, we'll give them this checkpoint, and whatever it was that they were doing before they killed them, we'll just make them face that exact same challenge, but with significantly fewer resources.
Yep.
So I mean, it would be like if I went jogging, and then I was like, oh man, I tried to run a 5K, I just couldn't do it. And it's like, how about this, man? We'll start you halfway through the 5K. You just have to pull this truck. And it's like, well, yeah, I mean. It's not running the 5K, but this is I would prefer to just have run the 5K. Like, please kick me back to the beginning of the level, give me a chance to get some power-ups, so that way I can actually make a solid attempt at this.
Yeah, I mean, the cynic in me definitely thinks this is intentionally more difficult, but disguised as a generous gift, so that you will continue to pump quarters in, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, as well, and also if we want to be cynical, I'm certain that that's what it is, because the idea is that you would want to put in more quarters, because otherwise you would lose something should you stop playing. Like if it always bumped you back to the beginning of the level, then it's less of a sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah,
So So you're more likely to like walk away from that versus like, no, I'm already 3/4 of the way through the level. It's like, yeah, actually you would be better off if they started you at the beginning of the level.
Yeah,
but you feel
definitely.
like you're, yeah. And so then from a game design standpoint, like I do feel for the game designers because that mechanic is almost impossible to design around because you have no idea. Like if I'm going in there with all of my 4 options, power-ups and lasers and a barrier shield and all of my power-ups set to restore my barrier shield should it be lost, which was like that was, my baseline, right?
Yeah. You are now as super powered as you can be. Right.
Any situation I'm dealing with is a radically different experience than if I'm literally struggling to get the power up to just simply move at an appropriate speed. So hilariously, what Aaron and I decided to do was switch off playing at death, right?
No, nice.
Death or levels. And I played the game before she played, and I played it a lot as a kid, so I was more skilled. And so whenever what would happen is normally I'd complete a level and hand it off to her, and then she'd die in the middle of the level and just hand the controller to me and be like, hey, guess who's inheriting my problems? And like, so I was consistently playing the game in that capacity, like always in the middle of the level with like no power-ups. I'd like slowly scrap my way back to the middle of like getting all these power-ups left and then hand it off at the end of the level. And then she'd be like, yay, he's dead. Your problem again. Fix it.
That's see, I know you have no siblings, but see, you would have made a fine older brother, because that's not as speaking as a younger brother, not every older brother is capable of doing that stuff. My brother was great. I love you, Chris.
But yeah, so I just thought that was like particularly interesting because, I'd be jamming through whatever, and then there would be sometimes where I would like die, and I'd be and so once you die, the slippery, muddy slope that you start to like roll down is steep indeed, because it's like once you lose 1 life, your chances of losing like 4 or 5 in quick succession is high.
Yeah. So I feel like there's one thing I need to talk about, just because I kind of want to know what your reaction to this was, but having a full, clear memory of this game, were you at all put out by the fact that they ask your gender and your horoscope sign, your astrological sign on the score screen? Because I had no memory of that, and when that came up, I was like, "Are you coming on to me? Like, what is happening right now?
Are we gonna grab a drink after this?" I mean,
and then Susan's interpretation of it was equally dark, like, because it pops up, and she was like, what are they thinking? Like, you're going to spot someone and you're like, oh, that lady got a super high score and she's my sign.
Oh, my.
I got to seek her out.
The 100,000 Sagittarius. Oh, we've heard legends of him, her.
Yeah.
And then like later on, it like smash cuts to like you at a bar with like a drink and the game sitting in the chair next to you with its drink,
The only right choice in that case.
That I don't know, that didn't bug me. I just, to be fair, I also put very, very little thought into it. Like the minute that it popped up, it's like, hey, you got your high score. I was like, cool, high score. And it's like gender. And I was like, male, sure. Astrological sign. I'm like, oh, neat. I like astrological signs. Like I was like the Motown singer who was just kind of like, oh man, you're going to give me $5 for all of my songs, like, sure, where do I sign?
Having not been a big arcade game player as a kid, and like just console life, right? Like I wasn't big in arcades, and I wasn't big in like early PC gaming or modern PC gaming for that matter. But like I always lived console life. So like when that popped up and it was like, oh, enter your initials, I was like, man, if there was ever any doubt in my mind that this was an arcade port, like this is the absolute ultimate red flag for a console port from the arcade. And then I expected that to be the one and only question I got asked was my initials. And then it's like, oh, by the way, also gender and sign. I was like, that's 200% more questions than I was expecting. for one thing, and those questions in particular, we don't know each other that well, Gradius. Like, get out of here. Like, you're drunk. Go home.
Oh, Gradius. Yeah, no. So now I'm picturing, like, at what point. So did you enter that information, or did you like scorched earth?
So this was
did
actually
you lie? Did you lie
this is a funny coincidence. So, of course, like you would always expect, the male option is the default one, and then my sign is the first one in the astrological table. So I lied about my initials and then told the truth about everything else by proxy.
So that's one thing. It's like I just it'd be funny. I mean, no, it'd be terrifying, but funny from a narrative standpoint. If it's like initials, but like let's assume it's not all on the same screen. So if it's like initials, yeah, okay, initials. Gender, male, sure. Astrological sign, this one, social security number. Like
1, 2, wait.
Date of birth. Make and model of the first car, like at what point did Gradius become like a phishing scheme,
Childhood best friend's name.
Mother's maiden name. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
People don't need to know my score this badly.
Yeah, and so then all of a sudden you like start to like, just put in random information or like opt out, and Gradius says like, are you sure you want to leave this high score on the table? You're like. Yeah. So no, I didn't get that vibe from it.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't quite that extreme, but it was somewhere in between those two things.
It was definitely more information. If I'm being entirely honest, I would probably say that I got a little bit of a kick out of it simply because when I was much younger, I didn't know the symbol for my astrological sign. So knowing that off the top of my head this time, I was like, oh, I'm an adult now. I know stuff. So I think that was
the
like
only useful thing I've learned in the intervening 20 years.
Pretty much. Yep. We're fathers. Anyways, so sad trombone. Yeah. So overall, that didn't bug me. So then one thing I would like to ask is, generally speaking, I think that your at least response time on most of the games has been better in the sense that you have been getting further in the game. So either your patience is higher, one or the other. But
neither of those sound right.
But how far through the game did you get?
No, this is exciting to me because I've been sitting on something that I actually said to Erin, and I don't think that she bothered to communicate to you, which is even more exciting. And so if I drop this bombshell and it just rolls right off you and it's a dud, that's going to bum me out a little bit. But you don't have to fake a reaction. You can be genuine. My own ability, I got through, I guess the volcano level, or I got most of the way through the volcano level where you get to the part where you have to like shoot out the little pink so you can like fly through.
Oh,
it's like wall, or no, it's sand the first time. The pink is in like the
sand.
bonus stage. Yeah, so there's the sand and you have to like shoot it out to make a way through. I think I got past that a couple of times of my own volition. And then while I was doing some just like tangential research, I found out that this is a Konami game and the Konami code works.
Does it?
It super does.
Yeah, because that's actually the thing, because I knew it was a Konami game. I was like, oh, man, I should check to see if the Konami code works. And then I just didn't. And I can't really say, like, why. I just didn't. But, yeah, and what does it do?
It gives you full everything.
Nice.
Yeah, so whatever your special weapon is, not the laser. So it gives you whatever the double is.
Right.
And then full shield, full option, and then you still have to manually do speed up and switch to laser.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Also, if your barrier gets worn down, you can just enter it again.
And then it just
fully powers back up. Here's the thing, though. So just to make sure you are, in fact, a human who grew up at the time in history you say you grew up in, What is the Konami code?
Sorry, and yeah, no, because
come on, where's your pop culture at?
Up, down, left, right.
BA start.
BA start. Yeah, I was gonna say BA start, but I couldn't remember if it was BA or BA start. You know.
Yeah. So here's the thing: if you were a kid at this time in history and you were writing this down to give this code to your friend, like say you found out that this code worked and you were going to write it down on a piece of paper and give it to me, how would you write it down?
I would normally do like up arrow, down arrow, left arrow, like all the arrows like out to the sides, and then BA, and then start.
That is a perfectly acceptable answer, and I probably would have done the same thing. Mm-hmm. The shorthand that I often saw this stuff written in was the first letter. So UUDDLRLRBA start, because it's all letters, right? When you get to the buttons, so then it all works out well. Here's the thing. Someone at Konami decided to be cute because you enter this from the pause screen. So you pause, you enter the Konami code, and then you actually see the animation slightly change. Like your shield starts, the options start to come out of you, and then you hit start, and then the animation finishes. Well, when you see the code written out, it's written out UUDDLRLRBA start. But it's not up, down, left, right, BA start. It's up, down, LRLRBA start. Yeah, because the Super Nintendo controller invented shoulder buttons, and they were called L and R. Here's the thing. If you enter it with left, right, BA start, you see the exact same animation, and the moment you unpause it, you die.
That is delightful.
So I spent probably about 3 or 4 minutes dying before I was like, I kind of had to stop and like put the controller down, and I was like, okay, think. There's no way that if they included this in the game, all it does is kill you. So I am surely doing something wrong. So just a little bit of, diving in the internet, and I found like 1,000 forum posts where people were just like, rah! And then, one nice person would come in and like, hold up the beacon of light among all of the dark trolls who were making fun of this person. And they were like, it's written out UUDDLRLR. You actually have to use L and R. And then I did that, and it works. And I was like, thank you, one nice person on the internet.
And that is the one nice person on the internet. Like, it's just them and no one else. No, I like that. So in my mind, like, you are the captain of the Gradius, right? You're sitting there in your cockpit, right? And there's like 2 buttons on your control panel. There's the self-destruct button and the like super powered button. And you're like, oh man, I really need a superpower. And then like you slip and you hit the button wrong the first time. And you're like, oh, okay, I got it. And you hit the button wrong the second time. And it just like smash cuts like 3 minutes later. And you're like, okay, this time.
Yeah. And it really, it did kind of have, until I realized the trick, some programmer was playing on me. I was kind of like, why does my ship even have this button? What is the utility of this button? Like, if I'm supposed to be a brave space pilot and I'm fighting these, what are we the evil invading aliens? What is the mission here?
I don't know. And I did want to talk about this because I don't know any of the plot to any of this.
I mean, there's a little opening cinematic where you see your ship inside a much larger ship, and then you come out of the much larger ship, and then you fly off and immediately start killing what appear to be hostile aliens. But I mean, maybe you're invading them.
Yeah. No, okay, so let's think it, because I don't have a theory on this yet. But like, okay, so one, that was the thing. So I watched the whole intro to see if I could glean something, and so all you get is that you're just out of the ship and then like gone, right? So you're definitely fighting some kind of a militarized esque thing, because they have
turrets and stuff. Oh
yeah, they have other ships which are significantly smaller generally than your ship. So So you definitely are fighting other militaries, but they are wildly different in, kind and type. So you could make the argument that you have gone rogue to some degree, and like maybe maybe you're like on the Battlestar Galactica, so like this is like the last human ship, and you are just exterminating like all alien life because I mean like there's like the different places you go to, that's not something that heroes do, like
none of
you've got
them
a scorched earth policy.
None of I don't think they ever show the pilot, but presumably the pilot is you, a human being, and none of the places you go seem even mildly hospitable to a human being. Like, you are clearly going to alien worlds and seeking out aliens and murdering them.
Maybe seek out new life.
You have and murder it. Maybe you have a super good reason for finding all of these alien species and murdering them. Like, maybe it's spoilers for Ender's Game coming here, but maybe it's like an Ender's Game scenario where like the only winning move is to go to their house and kick the door in and shoot everyone inside. But it certainly seems like you went to where they live and are now attacking them.
Yeah, I would say too that it's just, again, it's not. You don't have any strong evidence one way or another, but the tone is in the same way that a single plumber like rampaging through several territories and beating many sentient things near half to death with their own homes. It's not something that heroes do. None of this feels like something heroes do, especially because most of the bad guys that you fight aren't mechanical, they're biological, or at least they look that way, You
think most? I'd say like 50-50.
Well, I didn't use the Konami code, so I didn't get as far as you did.
Well, how far did you get?
I got to the that tech level where you have to like fly at the speed of holy crap.
Oh yeah.
That drained my lives pretty proper. But then I actually managed to get all the way through it, and so like the boss music plays up. I'm like, yeah, man, where's this boss coming? And he just came in from behind, nudged me to death, and that was my last life. And I was like, all right. And that was as far as I got.
No, so after the Tiki Heads, you actually fight like the next boss after the Tiki Heads, but before the one you're talking about is like another spaceship.
Yes, I thought that was before the Tiki Heads, because I thought, okay, so
you might be right.
There's Earwig Man, Bubble Man, right? Then spaceship, right? Because there's a spaceship, because that's the volcano level, right?
Yep.
And so then there's
the thing in the volcano is crap. Let's not dwell on this too long. There's the volcano level.
Yeah, there's the volcano level, and that boss is a spaceship. And then after that, there's the Tiki Heads. Mm. And then after that, there's the dual dragons of like whatever, a fire world, right?
Dueling dragons, yeah.
Yeah, dueling dragons, yeah. And then the tech level.
Okay, so this will make you feel better.
Mm-hmm.
I did not make it to the boss of the tech level.
Oh, okay.
Cheating.
Okay, I do feel a little bit better. Thank you.
Yeah. No, I told you, I'm not my thing.
not my game. And that was funny because when you told me like the thing for the Konami code, I'm like, that's still like, if you got past that level, that's skill independent of the Konami code, because it's speed based. It's all speed and reaction pretty much, So but out of those 6, only 2 of them are ships.
Yeah. Yeah. So but most of the individual enemies look like little ships.
Right. Yeah. Sorry. I was thinking mostly bosses.
The bosses are mostly biological, which means you're going to the home world maybe of these aliens and murdering them. Yeah,
and murdering their, like leaders, So that just, I mean, they look like monsters, but I don't want to judge a monster by its cover, so
this is definitely from the James T. Kirk school of interacting with alien species to punch them, as opposed to the Picard school of interacting with alien species where you try and talk to them.
Yeah, exactly. Like at no point do I see me and my spaceship like putting it in the park and hailing the dual dragons and saying, Darmok and Jalad at Tanagra. Like that's not. I never saw
Shaka when the walls fell.
Yeah, no, none of that happens. So yeah, I'm gonna say that at a minimum. Okay, so I do not think that we are the heroes. At a minimum, we are a soldier in a war, And with most wars, it's written by the victor, right?
Yeah.
Most wars don't have a definitively, hero side and not hero side, So if we go with let's go with that then. So if it is a war and history is written by the victors.
War
and
never
neither
changes.
of us beat the game. Then we are definitively the villains because they beat us.
Yeah, I mean that all seems fair. I was really, really afraid for a second there that you were going to say like we're an individual soldier in this greater war and we're just following orders we don't necessarily agree with. To which I was going to have to say that there's not a great history of that defense being utilized.
Nope. Yeah, no, I was not going in that direction. But then that would also be kind of interesting, though, because like if we assume that we are
space Nazis,
yeah, well, we're definitely space Nazis. But if we assume though that we are like a soldier in a greater war, imagine the scope of that war because we single-handedly take out like several alien bases, like it seemed like entire world. So imagine the expanse that war zone must like be in, it's almost like as big as like the Time War, and like that's why like Doctor had to like shut it all down because it was like rampaging through time.
Yeah, this is another one of those things. I can't remember which game we were talking about when I threw down this similar bit of dedication to the cause, but I could probably look this up, and I'm just not, gonna. It's way more fun to wax poetic about, but I'm willing to guess that in the arcade there was either no story or the story was part of like a loading screen crawl or something. Mm. And then in the console version, this information was almost always offloaded to the instruction manual.
Right. Yeah, probably. So yeah. And I'm sure that, like the actual canonical thing is, you're one of the last surviving blah, blah, blah. And, like generic hero, heroes never die kind of, whatever nonsense. But I don't know. I like the idea of, it being ambiguous, like, and we're definitely hitting home territories. Like we are
we are the evil invading alien.
Yeah. Maybe we're just winning a war that has justice on our side, but these aren't military installations generally that we're attacking. And I think that's actually a statement in and of itself. Like,
yeah, I mean, this is from the, there's one good guy on the screen and it's you and everything else is a bad guy school of game design.
Right.
So on the one hand, I want to say like, oh, we're projecting way too much onto it. On the other hand, it's obviously incredibly fun to do that. And then on the third hand, because we're one of the aliens with three hands, I don't want to just assume like, oh, game designers back in the day were all stupid. Like maybe there is like a super epic story and it's just lost in some instruction manual we will never bother to Google for.
Lost the time. Although I will say, for the record, for anybody listening, if at any point in time you find yourself beset on all sides by enemies and for some reason you are the only one who thinks that you should be fighting in this particular scenario, you might want to take a step back and think that maybe you're the problem, like, yeah, because when you're the only hero in the narrative, maybe you're not the hero.
Yeah, I had a friend. I was over at his house, and we were quite a bit older, not quite adults, but older, young adults. And his father was talking about how he had moved a lot as a kid, and how they always ended up next to jerky neighbors that they didn't get along with. And finally, after like the third or fourth tale of them moving, his son, my friend, was just like, maybe your parents were the jerks, and that's why you never got along with your neighbors.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is a valuable life lesson about how to view the world, because the narrative is not about you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, unless you have like the best hair in the world, you may sometimes win the game of find the pro tag,
Yeah.
I always love that the more succinct one for that. It's just that joke where it's, like the, wife calls her husband saying, like, hey, did you hear that there's a man driving the wrong way on the highway? He's like, one, there's hundreds,
Yes.
Like that old one. That's just what I always think of. It's just like, yeah, then if everybody else is doing something different than you, you may still be right.
Just entertain the possibility that you're wrong.
Just take a step back, think about it. It's like when you're building in the demon alarm for an installation. Just take a step, just take a minute and think, what am I doing that requires this particular alarm? Like
the snooze button, that one I understood. The fire alarm, absolutely. The demons invading from hell, what are we working on here?
Yeah. So just like I'd like a little bit more information,
So then that brings us, I think, to the final question, which is unfortunately more for you and a little bit less so for me this time. Does it hold up?
Honestly, yes, I think so. I actually genuinely enjoyed my time playing this game. Did they have its frustrating moments? Yes. One of the other things that, it like many games of its time is that, once you do die out at a certain point, I didn't want to slog through everything to get back to that point generally. Yeah. But I would say for a play session of anywhere between half an hour to maybe an hour, it was really enjoyable. I actually think it holds up. I would recommend this to somebody who likes this type of game. How about you?
I'm in a similar position, minus the nostalgia goggles for this particular title and the love of this genre. But even with those two kind of buffs absent from its scoring, I still I enjoyed playing it. And I could even imagine it's like, well, I have this game. Like if I want to play like an old arcade style, like Twitch shooter, a bullet hell game, I'd reach for this, crazy frame rate nonsense and all. It's especially out of the context of an arcade. I wouldn't put quarters into this, unless I was in an arcade and I just wanted to see what's the difference between the arcade version and the console version? How similarly do they play? Is it that different with a stick compared to a D-pad? But to sit there and just pump dollar after dollar into it, that's out of the question. But
right,
I only have memories of a few other bullet hell games that I played, and they were usually the top down style, where instead of going left to right, you're going bottom to top.
Yeah, was it Galaga, stuff like that?
Galaga. There was one I think called 1942 that was World War II themed.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're all, as you said, they're all different skins on the exact same experience, but
right.
With very very minor differences. But I don't remember either of those games. The top, traveling up one. I don't know if they're actually different or if they were harder or if it's just a quirk of my memory. But I have more fondness for the left to right style. Gradius style than those ones. So I every once in a while I feel like flying through sand hills in space for some reason.
Yeah. No, I mean, yeah, like I said, I think that it's if you are looking to play an old school bullet hell game, this is a good one to do that. It is, if you're looking to play a narrative intense RPG, don't play this game because
it's not that.
It's not that. But if you are looking for this genre of game, yeah, I absolutely think it holds up. Like I said, I really enjoyed it enough to the point where I sat down, played it, took my notes, and then sat down and played it again. Because I was just kind of I can tolerate this, unlike some of the other games that we played where I'm like, I did my time, and I'm not going back.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and that actually for me was a little bit of a relief because I was like, oh man, bullet hell game. I know going into this that it's not that my expectations are low, like, oh, I'm above these kinds of games. It's I fully expected to play in like 5-minute bursts.
Nice.
Like I'm going to play for 5 minutes. I'm going to break my controller, and then I'm going to have to wait 2 days to get another one from Amazon, and then I'm going to play for another 5 minutes. Like that was the experience I was afraid I was settling down for. And I tried to go into it with an open mind, but I was even bracing myself for frustration. I was more than pleasantly surprised. I was like, this isn't something that every weekend I'm going to, tell my family like, oh, leave me alone. I have to go play Gradius 3. But I still like enjoyed it and could imagine going back to it again, which considering the way I went into the experience is like a pretty significant win.
Oh yeah. No, if you go into any situation expecting to be like, I expect this to be barely tolerable and expect to have my sanity tested and then walk out being like, yeah, it was pretty fun. Like that's kind of a slam dunk from a game.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? Something to the effect of like, it's good. It's enjoyable. I was really happy that we enjoyed it because, just lately it seems like we've been on kind of a streak of, increasingly frustrating games for me. So I was starting to worry that I'm like, maybe just I've got to reset my standards. But this was, like I said, I enjoyed it. So I was like, oh, good. Oh, thank God. Like I'm not this old curmudgeon. Like I can still find joy in these.
Yeah.
Yay. So that was my win.
You are an old curmudgeon, but you also can still find joy in them.
Yeah, those two things are not mutual. I did fall into an either or fallacy, and that's on me. So
I'm looking forward to, because I played a ton. Mostly I played RPGs growing up. Like, did you play a lot of RPGs from this era? I don't think you really did.
No.
Yeah, so eventually we're gonna have to cross that chasm, and the only thing that I'm concerned for is being able to put in the time to give it the dedication it deserves. Because playing an arcade game like Golden Axe from '89 or whatever it was, or '88 is like, yeah, you can play 5 hours of that and you have seen all that you need to see, even if you only get one stage in and you just keep dying repeatedly. Like, you have 5 hours worth of experience on what this experience is. But the first 5 hours of Final Fantasy VI is not the last 5 hours of Final Fantasy VI, or the 15 in between those two sets of 5. So like there's definitely a bigger time commitment. I think we'll probably end up stopping at an action RPG along the way. Like, what's that one? The guy with the green hat. He's got like hair and like a green, it's like a sword and a shield. Super Mario RPG when you play as Luigi. That's it.
Oh yeah. No, sorry. I thought for a minute there that you were going to say, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, but then I remembered that sometime along the way you lost your soul, and
he had pink hair. Everyone knows this. There's God, what was there's some insane reason that they gave him pink hair, but I can't remember what it was. Yeah. No, check yourself. Go look at a screenshot of Link to the Past. He has pink hair. Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
All right. I'll bite. I don't know. I also don't know what that's about, but
they wanted him to like stand out from the backgrounds in a more prominent way, or they'd already used all the colors they could use on his sprite model, and so they used pink somewhere else. So it's something weird.
Hey, don't hair shame him. Like he made that choice. That's the style that he likes, and he saved the world from a giant pig monster. So
bunch of times.
Yeah. Sometimes, yeah. And then, well, it depends on the timeline. And on that note,
there we have to cut it lest we accidentally have a whole second episode.
just on timelines and time. Link's timeline makes a lot of Star Trek TNG time travel episodes look weak by comparison.
All right, we'll cross that bridge eventually, depending on the amount of generosity I can muster in my soul.
Well, here's hoping.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black. and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone. There's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creeping with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while. You're gonna think back much less on how you saved the day than on all the experience gained. At the end of it all, gamers play what we play. Not for game over, but rather for what we take away. The world is sad, but who cares? We all know that that's not what you came for. Your next adventure's already in sight. You're all set to go. You're excited to see what's all wrong till it's right, and the world is saved. So you're more along for the ride.